monster. You don't belong in this world.
Welcome to the Cable Club. I'm your host, Dawn, and I'm bringing you a special edition of our podcast today called Side Quest, where I'm going to talk about a new game that was launched only about a month ago called Hades 2. And if you don't know, Hades 2 is a roguelike game that is, I think, heavily inspired by Diablo. It's Greek mythology themed, so you'll see a lot of familiar faces from Greek mythology, especially the gods. And they essentially offer you blessings on your journey to go from point A to point B as you play through the game. I'm going to be bringing on a couple of guests to help me talk about this game. And initially, I thought we would build a god tier list as kind of an icebreaker, but that ended up kind of taking up the whole discussion. But don't worry, we talk about plenty of other elements of this game as well. And we're not giving a decisive review of this game because it is early access, and we all love Supergiant games, and we're sure that most, or if not all, the problems with this game, although I can't find too many, will be ironed out by the time that it launches fully. So, sit back, relax, and enjoy the discussion with myself and two friends of the show. I'm here with not Steve and not Dan, but longtime friends of mine and friends of the show, Hux and Eric. Say hi, fellas.
Hi, I'm not Steve.
Hi, I'm not Dan.
So, fellas, thank you for coming on. Today we're going to talk about Hades 2, a game that gets us all excited and gets Steve and Dan decidedly less excited. But, we can't account for good taste. So, but before we get into that, I just wanted to ask you guys a couple of questions so you can introduce yourselves to our audience a little bit here. So, what games, what genres, what do you like to play?
Eric, first.
Yeah, we'll send Eric in first.
Okay. Well, I am a variety gamer. I dabble in a little bit of everything, but if I had to pick a focus, it's typically RPGs, usually Japanese RPGs, and I do like a good Metroidvania game as well.
Right on. Okay. Well, I'm Hux. You may remember me from the Mega Man Battle Network 3 episode. That's one of my favorite games ever. But it doesn't necessarily fit in with what I'd consider my main genre, which is strategy games. So I'm a big-time strategy gamer. All of my favorite games and all of the games in my career in gaming that have been my favorites over time have all been strategy. That's real-time strategy like StarCraft and Warcraft. That's card game strategy like Slay the Spire, Magic the Gathering, and that's turn-based strategy like Pokemon. So that's where all of my energy goes.
And action strategy like Ghost of Tsushima that you've been playing lately.
That's
Spider-Man.
In Spider-Man, there's strategy, right?
Action, strategy, Metroidvania.
The stealth sections.
Yeah.
What's the best action to take this particular enemy down?
It's a tactical strategy game. So along the same vein, so Hades 2 is a roguelike game, which I feel like roguelikes, I don't know, would you say like in the last 7 or 8 years really kind of ramped high up in popularity?
Does anyone know when Slay the Spire came out off the top of their head?
I think it was actually like 2015, but I will get the actual date. Yeah. But I wanted to ask, what is your guys' experience in general with roguelikes?
So I have a bit of a dabbling in roguelikes now. I would say that Hades 1 actually probably started it off. But I've played a lot of other ones, a lot of the indie ones, like Wizard of Legend, Rogue Legacy was a popular one that I played a lot. So I would definitely agree that over the last few years, there's been a lot of big roguelikes that have hit the scene and have done very well.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like Slay the Spire maybe broke open the roguelike genre. Um, Again, since I'm more of a strategy gamer, I haven't played too many roguelikes except Slay the Spire. I've poured hundreds of hours into, and Hades 1 I've poured hundreds and hundreds of hours into. Um, so, they're both pretty different except for those main, the roguelike elements, the replayability. And I know there's a lot of other really good ones out there. There's some on my Steam backlog to get to someday. I've played some Rogue Book, I think. Yeah, but you know what else? Again, as a strategy and a card game guy, I feel like my experience with roguelikes, you can make an argument that goes back to Magic the Gathering drafts. Because,
Definitely.
yeah.
Yep.
So I love drafting. I don't care about constructed play anymore. If I'm ever going to pick up Magic Arena again, it's to sit down and draft whatever the new cards are. Don't even care. Don't read them. Just play. You know, that's my
Give me some
that's my
random
roguelike
stuff. I'll
experience.
find out what works.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that every run feels different, and as kind of a retro gamer, for some reason roguelikes do scratch that same itch. It's like you can sit down, you can start a run, you can generally beat almost any roguelike in basically an hour, hour and a half. There are
Mhm.
some that you can't, but the whole idea of just being able to sit down and complete a run feels very like retro-y to me.
Yeah. And very
I think that
accessible.
I think that plays a lot into their popularity now too, because everyone likes the shorter format. Like everyone's blowing up on TikTok these short form videos, but it's the same thing with video games. You get these short played like lengths, but at the same time, the roguelikes you can keep going back to, and it's always different. So you have that replayability. So you have these short sessions, but it's always new.
You know what I remember a little while back, Don, you got me into, I forget what it was called. It was a Pokemon ROM hack of
Oh,
Emerald.
Emerald Rogue.
Yeah, Emerald
It's so
Rogue.
good.
It was
I was
so
Yep.
just
good.
playing it two days ago. I finished a run where I
Yeah,
had like a sun team going. Yeah.
yeah. So so I like Pokemon, and I'm favorable to that IP. And then they took it instead of in the 100-hour RPG format or the super competitive min maxing all of your EVs and IVs format for competitive play. Roguelike takes everything I loved about Pokemon, crams it down into an hour, makes it real accessible, real fun, real portable. It's a good format. It's a good genre.
I wish we could have a whole separate conversation about that game because I'm a big Pokemon nerd, but
Aren't we
going
all?
through those games as many times as I have, the thing about the Pokemon Rogue game is it makes you use Pokemon that you would never touch in a normal playthrough. I would
Yep.
never have never won't ever raise a Sea King, right? But I had this one run with this Swift Swim Choice Banded Sea King, and I'm just gonna say if you know you know to
Yeah.
the listeners out there, right? That this would just be something that I would never take the time to raise and EV train, but because of the nature of the roguelike game, it's something that was easy to slap together in minutes and be able to play against a challenging or play in a challenging fight with. It's just fun, really really good.
Yeah, I'll have to put that on my list because I've seen people play it and heard you guys talk about it and plenty of others. So,
It's a ton of fun, and anything that can emulate Game Boy Advance can play it. So, which means includes your phone now. So,
oh, even better, on the go.
Be careful though; it's a productivity killer. It's great. All right, so now that we're all comfortable, we're all loosened up. You guys ready to talk about some Hades 2?
oh,
Let's
am I?
go.
All right. We're going to cue up some awesome Hades music, and when we come back, we will talk about that. So I just do that for me so I know where to put the bumper.
Got
It's
it.
easier when I'm looking at the reel. So I'll just do an overview of Hades 2. and then we'll just kind of have the informal geek out a little bit.
Are you playing for the bumper? Are you playing the sirens? Is that what's happening?
I think I'm gonna play the
I
sirens.
was like,
we're gonna
what
have
song are we picking, man?
there will be a song to open the episode. There will be the game talk bumper, and there will be the concluding bumper. So there will be at least three tracks. And
Yeah.
I'm trying to refrain from two of them being the sirens.
I think maybe the opening probably should be like the Hades theme, right? And then maybe the ending should be like the You Die theme, the dum 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 dum.
All right, so if you're living under a rock, Hades 2 is an action roguelike, I'd say more or less in the style of Diablo. And if you don't know what a roguelike game is, a roguelike game is a short form game that you would start playing, and if you die in that game, just as a general rule of roguelikes, you'll go back to the beginning. There's no save points throughout it. And if you're thinking that's totally crazy, the first few times I played a roguelike, I thought the same thing. And then you kind of get the hang of it. So once you get good at a roguelike, generally runs will take a short amount of time. But here's the twist. So in roguelikes, there are usually power-ups, but the power-ups will be different every time you start the game over. So the idea behind a roguelike is that you can keep playing the same game and get vastly different experiences, and it just creates this really addictive gameplay loop. And Hades, created by Supergiant Games, a really small studio of only about 16 people, and I think like 2 or 3 of them are actual musicians, out of San Jose, California, created a game. I think Hades 1 released in 2020.
Somewhere around
I
that.
feel like it was
Yeah.
before that. I think it became in the public around 2020, but it was on Epic Games Store first. I think a year or two before that.
I've got the
Officially
information here.
December of 2019 officially.
That's it.
Early access,
and-
it says here in December of 2018 on Epic Game Store.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a very interesting thing that they tried with Hades. Was they put it on Epic Game Store as an exclusive for the first year for early access, and I think a lot of that fleshed out the game, and it became what it was once it came to public release, which I think helped it a lot.
Yeah, and I think the early access format's not super uncommon for these smaller indie game studios either. You know, I think that's just something that happens now. Unfortunately, I think it happens with AAA studios too, but secretly. Nobody else knows it's early access, just them.
Yeah, they don't call it early access with the AAA games.
But so in Hades, it's kind of like an isometric view, kind of like Diablo. You play it on a controller though. It's not keyboard and mouse. And basically, you'll go from like room to room to room in 4 different biomes. At the end of a biome, you'll fight a boss. Like it's kind of like an act boss. And then each room has different rewards. And the chief reward among them would be boons. And just like the name Hades suggests, it's a Greek mythology themed game. And boons come from different Greek gods, and they'll grant you different powers and work in different synergies. And, you know, essentially by the time you go from the beginning of Biome 1 all the way to the end of Biome 4, you'll have built some kind of, hopefully, synergistic, you know, ability set that helps you easily conquer the scaling difficulty, right? And then I think what makes Hades different from many other roguelikes is it has a really robust hub world. So every time you die and you go back to the beginning, you go back to a hub world, and then there's different stuff that you can do with some of the things you collected on your runs and kind of build yourself up and gain some, I'd say, albeit like minor permanent upgrades to take on runs with you later. So to help make you vary the runs even more. So did I miss anything, guys? Is that kind of the you know, Hades in a nutshell? Is that our elevator pitch?
Let me see.
I-
Boons,
Sexy character models, you know?
Hub World.
Oh god, the art, yeah. No.
Yeah, and
No.
the art and music are top notch. I can't stress that enough.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
it's
Story,
beautiful.
voice acting. This is a very, very well produced game. They put just so much love and affection and work and blood, sweat, and tears into Hades 1. It was evident. That's why it won all the awards.
It
And
won
then
a
Hades
Hugo
2.
Award.
Yep.
It was the first video game ever to win a Hugo Award. That is enormous. And that is essentially, the Academy acknowledging video games as art. Like,
Yeah. And
beautiful.
boy,
Yeah.
is this art. If there's a word other than awesome, or, like if there's a gameplay word, that describes Hades, not including those, the word that describes Hades to me is art. That's just what it is. It is, their story is well developed and, takes place over a long period of time and brings the player along with the characters in a really compelling and emotionally fulfilling way. The designs of the world you're playing in is really, would you call it cell shaded, or I'm not exactly sure. It's kind of cartoony, but it has an art style. There's an artistic vibe to the Hades universe.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd call it.
Really,
I don't know if it's cell shaded, but it is definitely unique. And that's something that Supergiant as a studio has always been known for. Is they put so much detail and work into all of their games. Like, just to transition a little bit onto them, like most of their games are in the same vein as Hades and Hades 2 in terms of art, music, storytelling, voice acting. For a small studio out of San Jose with 16 people, like I don't think any of their games have missed.
So they've made other games. They really cut their teeth in the ARPG genre in 2011 with a game called Bastion. It has a very similar, I'd say, look to the gameplay. Like, obviously Hades is much later, so it's updated and changed a bit. But if you go and play that one, you'll definitely see the Supergiant signatures on there, including the voice acting and music.
Mhm.
There's another game called Transistor. Like, I definitely kind of really mirrors that art style. That one came out in 2014.
That might be up your alley, Hux, if you haven't picked that one up. There's definitely more strategy in Transistor than most of other Supergiant games.
Well, Supergiant has definitely kind of earned my loyalty at this point between Hades 1 and Hades 2. So, yeah, send me a link. I'll put it with the rest of the steaming pile of
Add it to
games in
the
my Steam
backlog.
pile. Yeah.
We
We,
are not going to have a confession about backlogs right now. I need to have like an amnesty week to finish all the games that I've started and said I would finish.
oh God, just counting the ones you started, not the ones you bought and haven't even touched yet.
Have you seen that meme where, like, buying games as an adult, the guy sticking it on the shelf and standing there with his hands on his
Yeah.
hips saying, "I can't wait to play this someday."
Yeah,
Yep.
That's pretty much where I'm at.
I just got the whole Mass Effect collection on Steam for a real hell of a deal. It was like less than $5 or something for the remastered version of the whole trilogy. I think it got like 6 hours into the first game or something, and it was like, this is okay. And then Hades 2 came out, and then Ghost of Tsushima came out. And all right, well, I guess Mass Effect's taking a back seat for a while.
Well, I look forward to couch co-oping Mass Effect with you someday.
Yeah, someday. We talked about the art and the artistry, the whole artistic vibe, but are we going to talk about the music now? Because that is just on another level from everything else.
Oh,
Oh,
man,
God.
the music.
Yeah, and it was in the first game, but I feel like they really, like, I feel like almost all they did from 2019 to now is just like record music for Hades 2 and like workshop it.
And
It's
we're talking like sound effects, the music, the intro music. That's all great. Okay, that's fine. The background music, that's fantastic. That's really good. The action-y when you're fighting the boss, that's really good. And then the like actual tracks, right? The like real full-on songs. Because
Yeah.
so far we haven't said it what it is we're talking about. But if you're a Hades 2 player, if you know what we're talking about. Who wants to spill the beans?
well, let me just stop there for a second. Suffice to say, if you're listening and you don't want spoilers, it's really not that kind of game, but if you don't want spoilers, you should probably stop now because we are just going to talk about everything that we know, and I think all three of us have at least completed one run of Hades and seen, I think, probably most of the dialogue that exists in early access. So,
Well, we assume most of the dialogue, but God, they put so much into this game. It is hard to find everything. And
yeah,
for early access, there's still a
There's
lot.
there's more coming. When you
and
beat the final
this
boss,
is access,
the prologue isn't there yet. They haven't
right?
even put
Yeah,
it in yet. We don't know what's going to happen at the end of the game.
But there's so much dialogue. Like basically every
already.
character has like 10 different dialogue sets just around the gifts you can give them. But then like, all right, so maybe we should talk
Yes.
about the story a little bit first, right?
We're
So
sidetracking.
in Hades 1, you play as Zagreus. He's the son of the god Hades. That's the reason that the game is named what it is, right? And he's a chthonic entity, which are the entities that exist in the underworld. And due to a deal with the Fates, he's not allowed to go up to the surface, and neither is any other chthonic entity. It hurts them to go to the surface. So Game 1 is all about Zagreus wanting to meet his mother, who had a falling out with his father, Hades, and now she lives on the surface. And Hades forbids it. Like, this is bad love at its finest, right? He does not want him to go up there and meet mom. So, like, Zagreus throws a tantrum, essentially, for the duration of the game, trying to escape from the underworld and see her, right? So that's like Hades 1, and I'm selling it short. It obviously has a lot of richness to it, but that's the gist, right?
Any description of Hades 1 that doesn't mention Boldy prominently is doing it wrong.
Boldy is best friend.
Hades 2 picks up pretty much where we left off, right? Except if you know anything about Greek mythology, you know that Kronos, the Titan of time, is the father of like the I don't want to say like elder
basically.
gods, but like the eldest group of gods, right? Zeus, Hades, Poseidon. Those are like the big three. Those are the children of Kronos, and he like, I think he eats two of them, and then like
He eats
Zeus gets
everyone
like
except
squirreled
for
away. Yeah. So
Yeah,
anyway,
Kronos-
they end up cutting him up into little pieces in real myth fashion and scattering him throughout the world. And that's what happens in this world of Hades. And now Kronos has reassembled himself and he's back and he takes over the House of Hades. And now you're not playing as Zagreus in Hades 2. You're playing as his baby sister Melanoe, who actually is a real Greek entity. Apparently, she is the goddess of spirits and ghosts.
Yes.
I didn't know if you guys knew, but I just
Nope.
Googled it because I'm kind of a myth head myself. So, myth
Yeah.
head.
Myth with a Y.
Myth.
So you play as Melinoe, right, in Hades 2, and my understanding, not knowing the myth, just knowing the game, and the story in the game, not the myth it's originated on, is you are in this sort of in-between kind of place that's not easily accessible to Kronos. And so you have a bit of a beachhead from where you can descend back down into the underworld. You're basically playing Hades 1 in reverse, trying to get down into the realm of Hades, because that's where Kronos, who's taken over, has set his throne. And your objective is to find him, kill him, and restore Hades to his throne in the underworld.
Yeah, the place that your hub world is called the Crossroads.
The Crossroads.
Yeah, and you can
Yeah,
go
Crossroads.
to either the surface or the underworld. So I take it to mean like limbo, basically.
Right, because and like they make a big point of saying that Kronos can't get you in the Crossroads, and if you go up, because your second objective, other than your primary objective to kill Kronos, your second objective is to ascend up to Mount Olympus and rescue all the gods who are being sieged by Kronos' forces. So because maybe if you rescue them, they'll make it easier for you to gain allies and defeat Kronos himself. So you get a choice in this one whether you're going to play a run of going up or going down.
Yeah, and that adds a lot of replayability, like even more so on a roguelike. Because Hades 1 was great, obviously, but you played through the same four biomes every time. You got to learn every pattern, every enemy. It became repetitive, but having that extra option now of, oh, I want to go up instead of down, you add a whole new set of different challenges, whole new set of enemies. It's basically you're getting double the game
Yeah.
for the same thing.
Yeah, so the replayability here is then, maybe I found a specific combination of the god powers that did really well above ground, but maybe it doesn't do so well below ground, and vice versa. Maybe something that works in one place won't work in another place, and not that you even have the real control over picking your loadout every game because all of your power-ups are randomized every run. So that's the nature of a roguelike, and that's fantastic. Just the replayability, the value you get. We didn't mention it, but this game was only like what, $30. Like, I put way more time into this than any $70 AAA game.
Yeah, I just checked it. I'm already 50 hours deep. I'm like
I,
49 and change.
I
I'm
don't want to
around
know.
there.
I check my time.
How
I
many
probably
nights have
should.
you guys played? Because according to the save screen, I think I'm on like night 78. Run
52
78.
now. 52.
Uh, God, I think I'm still around like 40s, maybe.
Yeah.
And nights are individual runs for the audience if you haven't played Hades 2.
Yes, because each time you fail, you basically return to Shadow, and you spend the next night to start your run and your task over to go hunt down Kronos or save Mount Olympus, depending on what your option is that time.
You sleep off your ass whooping, basically.
Yeah, sleep it off, take a painkiller, get going the next day. You're fine.
Yeah. So when you start, you don't start in the crossroads. Like as soon as you turn it on, you start in like a first run, and then I think it's like it automatically gives you a god boon,
Yes,
right?
Yep.
when you start on the game, they just throw you into the game. They
Yeah. They don't
explain
really tell you
next to
much.
nothing. It is basically, hey, you picked going downwards. Here's your character. You know nothing about them. Here's your first god power. Uh, Good luck. Have fun. And then
You know what else is
you
cool about
learn.
that? Sorry, just about the random, like the getting thrown right into it part, is that if you're like a Hades 1 veteran, there was no mana in Hades 1 and there is in Hades 2, and they don't say a word about it. They just go
That's
like,
true.
"Here you go. Oh, by the way, you have a blue bar next to your red bar. Want to know what it means? Figure it out, stupid." Like,
Yeah. So Hades 1 was definitely like a 3 button game.
yeah.
Well, I guess 4 if you count the dash, right? So you
Yeah,
you, you
dash
had
is
like
important.
dash, attack, special, and cast, right?
Mhm.
And dash and cast get used just by your character, and it's the same for this game, but each of the attack, actually dash too, frankly,
I
all
think
all of
everything has a
those,
charge now,
yeah, they
technically.
all have a function if you hold the button down. So they've kind of like doubled your move set in this game, where now you have like omega abilities, and now instead of just like a quick like dash, which would be like like a leap forward, you also have like an actual like sprint where you can move around the map quicker if you hold down the dash button.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And then
I will
like the
say
boons will enhance those.
the one downside that I do miss from Hades 1 that they seem to have at this point taken away from Hades 2 is multiple dashes. Um, Having that ability to dodge was much better in Hades 1. I like the sprint, don't get me wrong. It's a nice ability to have, but having multiple dashes just felt much
I think
safer.
maybe it can balance a little bit. So what we're not saying, what hasn't been said so far, is that the dash gives you a couple of frames of invulnerability. So a well-timed dash is as good as any block, right? You can, if someone's winding up a big punch, you can just dash right through the enemy and not take any damage. And in the first Hades, you had multiple dashes, so you got essentially more frames of invulnerability, a little bit more maneuverability, but your overall movement speed was not particularly fast. In this game, I think in Hades 2, I don't know if it was necessarily a balanced decision, but I think maybe it could have been because it gives you fewer frames of invulnerability, makes it a little more challenging in my opinion. And then also because if you dash and then hold your button, you'll get to sprint, which is your upgraded movement speed. They tie that to god boons. So like if you have particular gods, they can give you upgrades to your sprint, which to the best of my recollection, I don't think that they gave you god dashes in Hades 1. I think it's just
They did.
did
Yeah.
they? All right, I totally
They did.
forgot.
Like Poseidon's one would do like a big like shockwave after you dashed. You could
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
run into people with it.
Hades
They call
1,
it splash dash.
Athena's dash was probably the most busted in Hades 1.
Oh, you're right. You're right. As soon as you
Yeah,
said
you
the
do
Athena
like the
dash,
shields.
the reflector dash. Yeah.
You thought that was well. Anyway, we're not here to
Yeah.
talk about
It's Hades 1.
Hades 1.
Athena, as far as I am aware, Athena is not in Hades 2, which may or may not be a good thing. I don't know.
Yeah, they recycled a couple of gods from the first game, and then they gave us some new ones to give us some variety. The old gods have similar abilities, but not the exact same abilities as they had in the first game. The gods again, they make it. They're the majority of the characters. You have your main character, and you have a few other people you interact with in the hub world, the Crossroads. But the majority of your interactions in the game, other than with enemies, is with the Pantheon that gives you the boons.
Yeah, and they take over one of your moves, right? So you can get like the Zeus attack, and then there's something that Zeus does for your attack, or you could get the Poseidon special, and then the Poseidon will take over your special, and you'll get attributes from each god.
Yeah, I mean, just to
Which
give an idea, like the list of gods that they pull is actually pretty extensive. I mean, if we want to go through them, I mean, you have the main ones: Zeus, Poseidon, um,
Yeah, let's list them
Aphrodite.
out and get geared up for maybe our little tier list
Yeah, well,
argument.
actually,
Pick our favorites.
I'm glad we are going in this direction because I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and what we're going to do, we're by no means Hades pros, but we're going to
This isn't
Oh
going to
man,
be
we
like
got
the best in order of their gameplay ability. It's going to be what we think is maybe the coolest or what we've had the best fun with, I think.
or partially gameplay. I don't know, whatever criteria we decide. So I have up here for our audio listeners a tier list. You all know what it looks like, hopefully, and I have tiers S, A, B, and C because we're nice. Maybe we should make C like F. I don't know. I don't really think any of the gods are like absolutely totally useless. So maybe
yeah.
maybe this is.
I haven't found a bad god yet, but they all
And down
have
on
their
the bottom,
purpose. So
down on the bottom, we have the pictures of the gods. So in Hades 1, there was a different set of gods. I think Hux and I actually went through them and counted them once. I think it was like we came up with like 9 or 10 total.
Yeah, was no fewer than 8. Yes.
And in this, there's 8 main gods, but then there's you'll notice there are more entries here. There are like sub entities or titans or other people that also grant you their boons throughout the run. Like Hermes is a god, but Hermes doesn't fit in the same category as like the main 8.
yeah, Hermes I
And
qualify as a support god, which was the same role that he played in Hades 1. So
right,
that's
No,
still the
I
same.
disagree. I disagree. I'm sorry. Hermes has like a god icon. He has like you can have a Hermes room, right? He's not a support god the same way that like Artemis or Circe or
I mean, I meant
you
in
know
terms of abilities. Like he does not have like an attack ability or a special ability or anything like that. He can't affect your main buttons.
but also in Hades 2, there's a and Hades 1, each run has a god pool. So once you have picked 4 gods in Hades 2, you will never see offerings for the other 4 gods. It's a god pool of 4, except Hermes. Hermes will exist in every run no matter what gods you end up picking. And actually, the recent balance patch increased the god pool to 4. Before it was 3.
Yes.
Like you would pick 3, but you can get more gods in a run by like weird things like Echo, who can give you a boon from a previous night or something like that. Anyway, we're getting in deep here, but
I guess I don't know the game mechanics, but I feel like there's some of these gods, the majority of them are kind of what I call the main ones that you can get through a room. And then there's like, like I don't think you get Artemis more than once a run if you're lucky. I don't think you get Icarus, Circe, and I forget the witch in the bottom, her name.
That's Medea.
Medea, right? Those are like one-time interactions, right? Whereas everyone else is like multiple use,
Anybody
right?
else thinking boo a Medea Halloween? No,
No, but that's how I'm going to remember her name from now on.
just me.
I'm not familiar, so I can't say I know it.
It's okay. You're not missing anything. All right. So we're just gonna rank the gods here in whatever criteria we feel like we should, and input from you guys. But I'm the one with the mouse. Okay. So
Do you want to name them all real quick, or
yeah. So we've got Zeus, Poseidon, Demeter, Aphrodite, Apollo, Hephaestus,
Hestia.
Hestia.
Yep.
Yeah, Grandma. That's
Hera.
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 Hermes, Chaos, Selene, Artemis. This is Icarus, and Circe, and Medea.
Boo.
So Zeus, we'll take turns explaining the gods. So, but I'll go first. Zeus, his whole each god kind of has their own mechanic. They call them curses in this game. The lingo for me in this game is kind of tough because we talk about like curses. Curses are like status effects. Each god has their own status effect. And then there's like hexes. We'll get into that when we get to Selene. But like, so Zeus's curse is called Blitz, and it makes like a rain cloud appear above the enemy's head, and then if the enemy takes a certain amount of damage with the rain cloud over their head, if it doesn't expire, they'll take like a lightning bolt of damage. So it's like damage on top of extra damage kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like it's not 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like 1, 2, 3, 7.
Yeah, and then he has some other things that like he likes to basically take away a lot of your magic for like extra effects and stuff like that. Obviously all lightning themed. I think, Zeus is kind of like the price to sit at the table of like the upper tiers. Like if you're not at least Zeus, I feel like you're nothing special.
We only have a even number of brackets here, so that's going to make it hard. If you want to set him as the bar, is he an A or a B?
For the most part, I think for his general usability, I'd probably put him at A. There's not really any time where I would say, "Oh, it's Zeus. I can't really use that," because he just adds a lot to anything at that point. If you're doing damage, you're going to inflict the blitz. If you're doing multiple attacks, you're going to use his lightning. Even his cast, you can just set it and forget it, and people take damage. And the damage is nothing to laugh at either.
It's true. The cast is pretty good.
So I'm not usually a fan of his curse Blitz, but there's a couple of his abilities that do either chain lightning or random strike lightning bolts. Those are the ones I'm looking for when I see Zeus. If I see a Zeus boon pop up and my options include a bunch of Blitz, I'm unhappy. If I see chain lightning, I'm very happy. So,
but like, I've done so much damage with the Blitz. The Blitz doesn't sound good, but when you start to stack it and like get the extra effects, like make his lightning bolt strike twice and stuff like that, and then there's like another one that's like, if the Blitz expires and you don't deal enough damage, it still goes off and deals a percentage damage, and you can get the percentage damage to deal more than it would otherwise. Like you can get like if the Blitz expires, the lightning still strikes, but it deals 125% damage. Like it's like extra. So I don't know. He's got a lot of support for it. I actually think it's one of the better curses.
Well, I haven't had that experience, but like you said, he's kind of the ante, right? He's the price it costs to sit at the table. So out of 5, I put him in B pretty solidly. I would agree with the B.
If we're changing it to 5 tiers, yeah, absolute mid class. Solid B. He's not bad. He's not fantastic, but he's also not someone that you'd scoff at if he shows up.
Mm-hmm. So we're taking turns?
Yeah, so Hux, you want to tell us about Poseidon, our wet uncle?
I would love to talk about old Wet Willie. So Poseidon, obviously god of the ocean, god of the sea, right? And his abilities are a little, let's call them eclectic. He's a little, what's the word I'm looking for? schizophrenic.
Useless?
Yeah, well, like he has a couple of really really good ones, and then a bunch of really bad ones because thematically they gave him like two different themes, right? Half of his abilities are geared towards treasure hunting, right? Because if he's the god of the sea, Greek mythology, and there's all this treasure at the bottom of the ocean, and you want to go, hunting for gold and stuff. So a lot of his abilities are things like when you get gold, get twice as much gold, or when you get an upgrade, you have a 60, 70, 80% chance that you get a second upgrade. So you can get some stuff from him, but they don't necessarily improve your attack and defense and your abilities, your actual combat ability. But then he has a second sort of set where he's doing all of this tidal wave ocean sort of stuff, where he has a lot of knockback effects in the theme of ocean waves pushing people around, and he has a lot. His curse is called slippery, which is so if something is wet, they can take more damage because
I
the
think it's just slip.
yeah, or slip, or yeah. Well, so essentially, if you hit something with one of his water abilities, then they can get the wet curse on them. That will essentially increase the damage output on that target. And some of those abilities are incredibly good. So we talked earlier about the sprint mechanic. So you dash once and hold on the dash button to sprint and have higher movement speed. His the Poseidon enhanced sprint includes like you're rushing with a big ocean tidal wave in front of you, pushing people around all over the place. And there's bonuses for if you push people into walls, they take extra damage. If they have slip, they take extra damage. So some of his stuff is really good, but some of his stuff belongs at the bottom of the ocean where it was in the first place.
All right.
So for that reason, for me, I have him close to B.
Okay.
So you never know
Eric,
what you're
what do
gonna
you
get.
think?
Yeah, no, I mean Poseidon is it's either all in or all out with Poseidon. Especially
Yep.
when you pull up that reward list, you're like, awesome, what can I get? And you're hoping for like any of his attack boons or his sprint boons or anything like that, and then you wind up getting his support stuff. It's like, oh, well, you get 50% more gold. That's only useful a little bit.
Yeah, and I
So
don't ever have gold problems. Like it just doesn't happen. Like I'm never at a point where I'm like, oh man, I wish I had like 50% more gold. Like
yeah,
it just
or
doesn't
like
happen.
you get the reward that's like, oh, here's a random spattering of ashes and grasp and gold. It's like, all right,
Right.
cool. You wasted a boon slot for this.
Yeah. So
Yeah, and like
none of
eventually that becomes just straight up obsolete because you don't need
that's
those materials much, right?
exactly. So we
Yeah,
didn't mention, but in the
dead
hub
dead
world,
boon.
there are materials you can use in the hub world only that don't impact your actual gameplay in the run at all. And once you reach a certain amount of gameplay hours, once you get to 200 hours or something, and you've got every upgrade possible, all of those extra resources are strictly useless.
Yeah, I would actually edge Poseidon down like all the way down. Like I think if we put a D tier in here, I think Poseidon is it.
Oh
I
man, I'm
think
thinking
his.
about the other gods that I think are D tiers, and I think Poseidon might be a little bit better. But okay,
I would
All right,
probably
well,
say C tier
hear
for
me out.
Poseidon.
Hear me out, okay? Poseidon's highlights are that he has those like wave attacks that just add strict damage to your attack, right? So if you're using
Mhm.
like the daggers, which are like fast hits but small damage,
Mhm.
right? You don't want percentage increase to your attacks because it doesn't move the needle much. You want Poseidon's attack where it hits with those waves that hit for like, almost like 90% of the damage that your regular attacks do. It's like an instant double to the amount of damage you do with your basic attacks and specials and all that stuff, right? Those are like Poseidon's highlights. You don't want him with the axe because you don't hit often enough really to like make use of those waves. You want percentage increases because you're doing big damage already, right? Second thing is Poseidon doesn't have a curse until you get like something first, right? Like you need something else to make the slip curse go off. And in this game, you get bonuses for having curses on enemies, big ones, like 50% more damage if an enemy has 2 curses on it, which sounds like a lot to do, but it's really not. And like just the fact that like Poseidon is never going to give you a curse right off the bat just really makes him a god you don't want to see a lot. And on top of
Okay.
that, I hate his Chad design. So he's down in D tier for me.
That's fair. No, I can't argue that one.
All right,
Poseidon's.
I can be talked down to C, but if the two of you outvote me with D, then go for it.
I'm torn between C and D. I mean,
You
his
gotta pick,
attacks
Eric.
definitely have use. I'm gonna go with C.
All right.
Eric, tell us about Grandma Demeter.
Oh God, like I don't know if I can talk about Grandma Demeter, unfortunately, because like she's one of the gods that I don't use.
Oh God, you're gonna get so much pushback from me here.
That's fine. If you can vouch for her, that's great. With the weapons that I tend to use, not great. Don't get me wrong. She's a great god. Her whole shtick with freezing things and crowd control is phenomenal. Um, I don't use it a lot. I probably should use it more. I'm not going to deny that, but I don't know. I think I just like big numbers go bang. So Demeter.
I find with Demeter that some of her abilities just don't kind of work mechanically the way I want them to. Like her sprint, the whirlwind that follows me, I can never really get it to stay in the place I want it to stay in, and like because you have to like sprint and then stop sprinting, and then you're in the middle of a bunch of enemies. So now, but you can't sprint to get away from those enemies, or else you move the whirlwind with you. Like I just have a hard time actually making her work mechanically.
Oh, guys.
Yeah, maybe you're better off talking about this one, Don, and I'll talk about Aphrodite because I use Aphrodite a lot.
All right, so the 50% damage bonus you get. Okay, so Demeter is like basically the evergreen god. It works for everything, and here's why. Demeter's strength really comes from the cast. So she has like 3 boons that can make your cast stronger all independently, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the one you don't want is the one that follows you around most of the time. There are uses for it, but like she has a cast that can freeze, and freeze is her primary curse, and freeze lasts while the enemy is frozen, but also during its recovery time. So there's like a timer after you freeze an enemy, and it can't be frozen during that time. It's still under freeze status. So for that curse damage bonus, the 50% damage bonus, right? That's one curse, but then she has a second super secret curse that apparently isn't mentioned anywhere, but it's just called Chill, and it like slows enemies down. So her second ability that makes the Cyclone that deals small chip damage also applies Chill. So if you're paying attention here, your one cast can apply 2 curses with one button instantly, and now you're doing 50% damage to whatever, like 50% more damage to whatever it is you're hitting. If you have not tried Demeter, seriously stick on the Origination Arcana card and start using it, because your runs are going to go a lot smoother. Especially with like the axe, you just like sweep and kill like 5 or 6 enemies all because they're cursed twice.
It's definitely a flaw of mine. I don't use the cast as much as I absolutely should. I use it for some crowd control, but I never really think of it as a form of DPS. So you're selling me on both Demeter and the cast button. So I think I'll give that a try on some of my next runs.
And like her regular attacks just freezing. She's one of the gods that's kind of like Apollo, where she has a really high percentage increase to your attacks and specials, which is kind of nice too. They really didn't have to do that, but I think and she has like a support boon where you gain max HP every time you like pick up a resource,
Mm-hmm.
which is also will add up if you get it early enough in a run. Like I don't know, she's just so good, guys.
Yeah, like I said, you're probably the best person to talk about her then, because I will admit I've been sleeping on Demeter, hearing all that, because I did not realize that the after effect also counted as a curse. The chill is something that carried over from Hades 1, where any of your attacks would slow and it would be considered chill, and then you get to a certain chill stack and it would freeze. So that's a carryover, which is an interesting shout on that one. But no, it's the double cast damage and effect. That is news to me, and hopefully the listeners are also learning things from this, because that is a huge benefit to know that.
We're here to teach on the Cable Club podcast.
Yeah, I mean, all right. So if we're gonna put letters down now, all right, we've had the explanation. I had her normally at like B, but if you guys vote her up, go for it.
She's like
Done.
windmill slam S tier out of this entire crowd, in my opinion. But
Oh, I've got a favorite, believe me, but we're not there yet. When we get there, I'm going to call Mulligan. I'm going to take over.
I won't accept anything less than A for Demeter.
Yeah,
Eric,
no,
where are
I
you at?
mean, no. Hearing the explanations and the things that I did not know, I knew she had like good percentage increases to her attacks and everything, and like the life gain. But learning that about the cast, no, that definitely bumps it up to probably S tier. Just utility and the extra damage, if you're running that, is phenomenal.
So yeah, and if you're following along here, like you bring a weapon into you with every run, and the weapon is going to have different attributes, different attacks, and
There
different
are
specials.
multiple weapons you can select from to start a run.
But the cast is something that you'll have no matter what. So it's just your character has the cast move, and what it is like a giant like binding circle where it makes enemies within it slow, and if you charge it to make your Omega cast, it makes them even slower, and then it will deal like burst damage at the end. So it's like a CC mechanic, but it's a move that you always have no matter what. So Demeter is like the best person for this move that you have no matter what, meaning she can kind of really slot into any build. So it's kind of a rationale here.
Yeah, a good overall pick that will fit in anywhere if you're using cast at all. And if you have the curse arcana, which is a whole other story there,
Yeah.
Well, that kind of
that's another
versatility
rabbit
definitely
hole.
earns her a high rank.
And this like tier list discussion is kind of opening up so much more about this game. This game is like the really like thickest, most layeredest of onions. There's
They
just
call
so
it the
much.
the godlike roguelike.
Yeah, it really is. Just to pause for a second on that Arcana comment. So there's like a whole system of like these tarot cards basically that you get like a certain amount of points that you can like turn certain tarot cards on and off, and certain tarot cards turn on if you do a combination of another. And again, another way for you to customize your run. Like if you're going for a specific type of build, you can manipulate your Arcana cards to complement that build. There's just so much.
We haven't
going
talked
on here.
about keepsakes either.
Yeah,
So
keepsakes
for those
too.
of you keeping score at home, before you even start the first level, right? If you start in the crossroads, you can select a weapon. Oh, by the way, the weapons have levels. Oh, by the way, the weapons have extra attributes called aspects that you can turn on and off. So a weapon with an aspect, your tarot card arcana setup, your keepsake, and also your pet. Is that
Yep.
everything? So you got all of those things that you can select from before you even go off to play the first level of a run. And so again, when we
You
talk
also get to
about
pick up or down too,
yeah,
Yep.
and up or
Yeah.
down,
and then pact
later,
of punishment or whatever the thing is.
yeah, the version,
in this
the
one.
heat in this game, the extra
Yeah.
hard difficulties. So before you even
Custom
ever play,
difficulties.
yeah,
Custom difficulties. It's not like, oh, I'll play on hardest mode, so all the enemies just hit harder and have more HP. No, like there's like actual attributes you get to customize your run with.
yeah.
How can you not love
So
it?
yeah,
How
so
can you not
the
love it?
replayability is just stratospheric.
There is
Yeah.
so much.
Eric,
Moving
you
on
said
with
you
our
were
story here.
you were
You're
a big
an
fan?
Aphrodite fan.
Yeah.
I think we all are with a design like that. But yeah,
Yeah, I mean
sounds
the
Eric
art
sort of.
is great, but no, Aphrodite is definitely a god that I have started actually taking her keepsake at the start of a run just to see if I can get it an early boon from her, because I have my favorite weapons, which are the axe and the daggers right now, and Aphrodite excels at close range combat. Just straight up, like all her boons have a high percentage increase at close range. And
Which
then
is
she
very
also,
ambiguous, and I hate it. But okay,
yeah,
Me
I
they
wish
don't
there was I
really,
wish there was a dotted line I could see on the screen.
you just pick her when you have the daggers. You're like, yeah, this. I'm not worried.
yeah, daggers or axe,
Or-
you're in range if you can
Yeah,
hit them. It's
axe.
fine.
Axe is another good bet.
Yeah.
Kind of a
But
nombo with Apollo, but
but yeah, other than her close range abilities, she has the curse weak, which causes enemies to deal less damage to you, which is very beneficial if you're up close. I mean, obviously, the goal of the game is to not get hit, but it's nice having that extra effect in case you are right there in their face. She also has a lot of healing abilities and things like that. Bonus to life gains through like fountains or food. Um, and then God, I don't remember all of them. She has so much, but mostly I just take her for the damage buffs.
Because
So
all her
what?
stuff is close range, she has some of the highest damage increase in the
Yeah,
game. If you want
Yeah,
deeps, then she's the one who gets
she
deeps.
she winds up being
and
like very high risk, high reward kind of gameplay.
But she can cover
her
some of
her her
those.
cast sorry, her curse lasts a while too. Weak stays on the opponent for like a good like 8 seconds, I think.
Yeah,
Actually, so
something like
my
that.
favorite thing with Aphrodite is she has a boon that says, depending on the rarity level you roll when you get the boon, either at some amount of percentage of life, if you can get through a fight with more than that percentage, either 80%, 70%, right? If you have end a fight with 80% life, then you get healed all the way back up to full after every fight. So it gives
Yeah,
you a little bit of leeway where you can get hit, just not too much, and go back to full and start every fight fresh, which is not something to be laughed at to get that much healing. And for example, for me, the first time I ever beat the final boss was because I got her that ability at like the highest rarity or whatever, and it was. I think it was not legendary or heroic or whatever, the purple rarity, but it said after every fight, if you had 60% or more, like 60%, I could get hit for 40% of my life in any given fight and go back to full. I was just like never. It felt invincible.
yeah, and that's definitely one of her stronger ones. Like she she allows you to make those small mistakes and not get super punished for it anymore. Um, this and that boon in particular is one of the reasons why I love taking her. Is it's like, okay, yeah, I made a few small mistakes, but oh well, here's just all your health back because you made a small mistake, and just try again.
Yeah, yeah. I have her pretty high. I would put her at A.
Above
Pretty.
Zeus?
Yes, yes, above
No.
Yeah,
Zeus. Eric, back me up.
no, I'd absolutely put her A. I mean, I'm a little biased in it, but I would put her A tier. Just the amount of damage you can do with the right builds, and the healing boons in particular can save a run.
I'll put her up there. I'm not happy about it, but I'll put her up there.
Listen,
I
I
think
think
I
it's
think she's fairly weak,
no.
honestly.
She has some of the
She's
best
not
DPS and
she's
some of
not
the
as
best
weak as
healing.
Wet Uncle, but
She's,
she's pretty weak. All
I
right.
would like it if you would take Apollodon because I want the next guy.
So do I.
Oh man,
But
okay.
for a different reason. But okay, so Apollo's whole thing is making your attacks bigger. He has a pretty decent like high percentage like damage increase. I think his abilities are made purposefully easy to understand. I don't know what god you guys got on your very very first run, but mine was Apollo.
Mine
I
was Aphrodite.
I feel like
Okay.
mine might have been Apollo.
So he fits in like a really basic, easy to understand
No, you're right. It was
area.
Apollo. Are we not sure it's not just always Apollo? I think mine was
It,
Apollo.
it might be, and I think he's
Yeah.
basically the tutorial god. He has some like interesting stuff where like he can make your cast bigger without taking up your like cast slot, right? So you could have like, Aphrodite's cast, but Apollo making it bigger, right? Um, yeah, he's got like a really insane legendary though that makes all of your Omega attacks just strike twice.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Oh
like
Lord,
just like straight up, yeah. So you can
I
get
don't
some
think I
really
found
insane
that
stuff.
yet.
But I think you can say that about a lot of the gods. I don't think that's enough to like make him.
Well, I
I
think
I think he's B tier, and I think he's below Zeus. Like
I think well,
that's how I feel
just the
about him.
one thing you were saying that since he makes everything bigger, it makes it easier to hit more targets. It also makes it easier to hit from further away. So I find that I save a lot of life when I'm playing as Apollo because I'm not in the middle of the fighting. But I think the important thing, I think it's underestimating. It's selling him short when you talk about making the cast bigger. Like it's not a big deal. Like the cast's big, most important feature is that it's crowd control. It locks in place anything caught in it, and if you make that circle bigger, you can kind of gum up a measurable portion of the screen, catch a lot of enemies in your web, so to speak, back out and nuke them from afar. I think that making the cast bigger is one of the best reason to pick Apollo.
Yeah, maybe. I think I mean, he has a pretty good just straight up cast in general, where it's like the Sunstrike thing that hits a million times too. That deals a lot of damage.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know. I don't feel like the one thing he does well pushes him higher than B tier.
No, I have him at C for sure. I just didn't want that one ability to be underestimated.
If
But
he's C tier, then Wet Uncle is definitely D tier.
yeah, I mean, you can move him down to D. We added all these extra brackets now below D.
Yeah.
I'm just
All
gonna throw it
right.
out there. I think Hephaestus is also D tier.
Nope.
But go ahead. He's definitely not higher than Zeus.
Yeah, he is. Oh my god, I love Hephaestus. All right,
Okay.
so Hephaestus is a special ability because he's the god of the forge, right?
He's the god of Tings.
Yeah, he's the god of Tings. He has his little hammer and it goes ding, and basically what the ting is in this game is a big nuke, and it's not just a nuke because it's on a single target. But it's not like an AoE, it's more like a chain lightning. Essentially, if the thing that gets nuked is close to a couple others, it can kind of bounce and nuke several targets. So it's not as
I think it caps at like 3. I don't think I've ever seen it hit more than 3.
no. I've seen
I've had it hit 4 or 5.
Yeah.
I always felt
Yeah.
that it was more like either like a circle around the target or like a cone, because it's very selective on where it hits. But
This Ting also has a cooldown too.
Right.
Which is
so
so you can't just spam it. Like it goes
Right.
off and then it can be a long time before it comes
Right.
up again.
So one of the things you can do over the course of a run, when you get a boon from a god, you can occasionally power up the boon and increase the stats on it. And so increasing the stats on the Ting from Hephaestus is reducing the cooldown. So I have had runs where the damage from those we're going to keep calling them Tings, I guess. The Ting hits for 200-300 minimum, sometimes 500-600-700, and it hits multiple targets, and the cooldown can only be like 3 or 4 seconds. And I personally think that I use the cooldown to my advantage because I will run in, trigger all my Tings, hit a bunch of targets for huge damage, and then run away. And since I know that's what I'm doing, I'm watching out for my opponent's moves. I'm dodging, I'm ducking and weaving, I'm using the dash, I'm using the sprint. And then and if you have the Ting attack on multiple different moves, multiple different buttons, then they have their own independent cooldowns. So the Ting cooldown on your basic attack might be 4 seconds, and the Ting cooldown on your sprint might be 6 or 7 seconds. But what it equates to is you can go short cooldown, long cooldown, short cooldown, short cooldown, long cooldown, and essentially get them off in a shorter time frame. And I can't emphasize enough that they are really big hits. They're as big as some combo hits just individually. And I think that kind of game style, the gameplay loop that promotes for me, to dodge more and to watch my opponents more, but still get in large amounts of damage, and I think that it really, I think in particular with like someone like Zeus, where you have the blitz mechanic, if you have a blitz on someone, one of these Tings will just instantly trigger the blitz curse for the extra damage there. So there's a couple of good synergies, but it just leads to these. It's not a very steady DPS. It's a very spiky, explosive DPS, and I love it.
He doesn't help any of like the weapons and aspects though. Like he just plays the same no matter what. His damage is so capped. Like he can't like
the real question is, does Hephaestus offer much other than the Tings? I mean, yeah, the Tings are really strong. They're 400 damage a pop, give or take. But like beyond that, I think the only other boon I've been happy to see is that you get increased max life based on your magic.
I mean, he does armor too. Armor's pretty good. If you pick up like the epic armor, there's like 100 armor or something. That's a lot.
His revenge is like if you get hit, then you get some like mana back and some HP back or something after you get hit. I think that's not bad.
Also, who needs that much mana? Like the amount of mana that you get is absurd. Like it's like here's 50 mana for taking a 2 damage hit when I'm only down like 10 mana at most.
You don't want to use your face to recover mana. I'll just throw that out there. So like all of the gods have a way to recover mana. I'd say the worst is Wet Uncle having to run around and collect the orbs, but like the second worst is definitely using your face to recover mana.
I like the armor ability that says you what do they call it? I forget. All of a sudden, I'm drawing a blank. The word when you cap some of your mana to get a permanent ability.
Prime it.
Channel.
No,
Prime.
Prime. Yeah.
I like his ability that says you prime some mana, and then every level you get 15 armor or 20 armor, and it keeps stacking. If you don't get hit, then you get more and more armor.
Oh no, it doesn't stack. It goes away. It's just for the chamber.
Yeah, it's until the next location. So
yeah. Like you get 20 armor, and then when you leave, you lose 20 armor, but then you get 20 armor back. So like if you lose your 20 armor in that chamber, you'll get 20 armor in the next chamber, but you don't get like 20 and then 40 and then 60 and then 80. It is still very good.
Works, but,
no, but it is still very good, but it's not that good.
Yeah, if it was
that would be
stacking
totally
armor,
broken.
yeah, if it was stacking armor, that would be so much better.
Yeah, no, I mean, as is, you have to pay a chaos price to get like 12 recovery after every chamber. Imagine getting 20 just for no reason.
I might be mistaking her with one of the Arachne dresses.
Yeah, there's Arachne's sash that gives you like +4 armor every time you leave a chamber, as long as you have armor.
Yeah,
but
that's
if it breaks, it breaks. Yeah.
Yeah. So sorry, I got those confused.
So I don't know. I think I am dodging I'm dodging Hephaestus as much as I can most of the time. Unless I need to fill a slot, and that slot is the sprint. That's like the only reason I take Hephaestus.
He goes with everyone for me. Like I can have any other build doing all sorts of other stuff, and then just kind of throw a ting on top. I just put a ting on it onto. It's like chocolate goes with everything, right? Just add a little chocolate.
It's more like mustard. Goes with most things. Really bad on some others.
When I see Hephaestus, I'm always find myself thinking, do I want to take the ting or do I want to take a percentage increase that I can grow better?
Yeah, he doesn't offer you a percentage increase or anything for the rest of the time. He's not doing anything. He really takes that Hephaestus is a lame god thing to, he takes it personally.
400 damage sounds great in the first few levels, but once you get down to those final bosses, it's like 400 damage is like maybe 1%.
Yeah, Kronos does not care.
All right, well, I had him at A, so you guys are going to talk him down, so you'll outvote me. Go ahead, slam on him.
I don't know. I mean, I'm hovering around C tier because I appreciate the damage, and he does have some good support boons. But like,
he's not better than Apollo, though.
I don't see myself using him over Apollo.
Yeah. Boo.
Who wants to do Hestia?
I'll take Hestia. That's fine. Hestia is one of the new gods that's come into Hades too. The god of fire and hearth. She has an interesting damage over time mechanic with the blaze. Yeah,
I'm with Hux on this one, but I'm a glass half empty kind of fella, as we're seeing.
It is not great. I am thoroughly disappointed with it. Just in the time that it takes for that damage to tick. Like you can stack that thing up to like hundreds of blaze damage, and you can see it in their health bar. You're like, great, they're dead. And then you have to sit there for like
but they're not.
30 seconds.
It doesn't help.
And then they're wailing on your face.
The things that have the biggest HP bars, like the floor bosses, like I remember stacking like a literal 1,000 damage onto the third floor boss. Not using a name for spoilery reasons, but
go ahead. Third floor boss.
Cerberus. Right. Yeah. So I remember stacking literal thousands.
Who has a lot of health.
A literal 1,000 burn damage on Cerberus, and then do you know what happens? He ticks, and he hits one of the cutoff
the
points.
HP gates.
Right. The HP gates, and he gets his little shield, and he goes away, and all that burn stack goes away. And then he comes back, and you have to stack 1,000 more burn, 3 points at a time on him again.
I've seen people put tens of thousands of points of burn onto things.
Yeah.
And
And
that's
you
that's
can run
that's
around
what
in
it
circles until it dies, but he'll kill you because it takes
right.
10 minutes.
Or if you keep fighting, you'll literally out damage the Scorch, just because the ticks go down. And basically, like what the Scorch is like prepaid poison damage.
Yeah,
Like
Yeah.
essentially, if
It's
you were to
poison. It's
equate it to
poison
something
damage.
else.
It's dot.
Yeah.
it's bad Dionysus from Hades 1. That's really what it comes down to. Because
And
And
he
I
was
don't
the
think she
damage
has a
recovery.
redeemable other quality, right? Like, what else does she do?
I
Everything is
think
about that burn.
I think
I
the
think
only thing
I
that I've enjoyed with her is the projectiles. Is like you can add fire
Oh yeah,
projectiles
yeah.
to your cast and your special, which give you that range option if you're using a short range weapon.
Yes, that's actually pretty good.
Yeah, I like throwing my cast like a missile. That is nice. And then it'll explode for some damage, right?
A lot of
Yeah.
damage. You
Yeah.
can get that sucker up to like 300 if you palm it a couple times.
Yeah, it starts at like 50 extra damage on top of your cast damage. So it stacks with whatever cast special you have. And then you can also
And
do it with
unlike Hephaestus, you
your
can fire
Omega
it whenever you
specials.
want.
But
But still, I don't think they actually.
as a
Seriously, what
whole,
else does Hestia do?
So the only
not
reason
a
I
lot.
pick her is for that double curse thing, because the cast can just apply Scorch. So
Yeah.
like sometimes I'll pick her for that, and sometimes I'll pick her for the missiles, but not a lot, because the missiles are just like fixed damage. So I don't know.
Yeah, in general, I have not found beyond the projectiles. There has not been a boon that Hestia has offered me that I've been like, awesome, this is fantastic. Uh, Hestia for me is absolutely down with Wet Uncle.
Yeah,
I don't know
would
if I put her at D.
I would
I
agree.
kind of have her at C, but you can talk me into a D. Yeah.
I think she's
She's not
worse
B.
than Poseidon, actually, because Poseidon's niche uses are so good. Like there's this one knife build where if you throw the fan of knives, there's a boon that makes them all come back to you and hit a second time. And then there's an aspect that makes them home in on enemies. And if you get the Poseidon like special just for that, like even without anything else at all, the damage you deal is like in the thousands just off the one boon. So like I think just based on that alone, it just edges him out over Hestia. Where I can't think of a case where I'm like, oh yeah, Hestia's the girl for this. No,
Yeah,
she
and Hestia
has the
doesn't even
one boon.
provide like percentage increases to damage at all. It's just like, oh, you can stack more Scorch. Great, that means I just
Yeah,
have to
well,
wait longer for that damage to tick in.
The one thing that makes her good is she has the one boon that makes the Scorch explode once it reaches a certain threshold. Like I think if it reaches like 300, it'll like explode and deal all that 300 at once. So if you can apply Scorch quickly in a build, you just go complete Hestia. I think you get some respectable damage out of it. But yeah, if you're not doing that, if you're picking her up as a one-off, it's really just not going to go places. No legs.
Okay. No legs.
I don't think.
Yeah, no,
Ooh.
not carrying a run for me.
All
I
right,
don't
so
even know this cat's name. Hera.
Hera, I'm also going to put in the don't know category. I've played with her. I pick her boons. I haven't done enough of it to see, but like the couple of things I know about Hera are like one, her magic gain is like the best one, where like it says when you run out of magic, prime X amount of magic to refill to full instantly. Like if you're in the middle of like an Omega special and you don't have the magic for it, it'll just instantly refill your magic and prime like 5 magic. And you can just do that basically until you run out of magic and you can't prime anymore. But like if you end a run with like 200 magic, like you're gonna do that dance 40 times. Nothing is going to survive you.
Yeah,
basically.
The amount of magic that you prime, which is permanently locking away that you can't use, is fixed. So if you have 100 mana and it says when you run out, prime 10 of it, then you spend 100 and then you get 90 back, and then you spend 90 and you get 80 back, and then you spend, right? But if the 10 stays the same number, so as you keep playing, your maximum mana goes from 100 to 120 to 140 to 180 to 200, and the amount you prime just stays 10. So that every time you upgrade your mana is like adding 30 mana to that 100 essentially is like adding like
a lot.
Way more than 30, whatever the math works out.
Yeah. So, like, just on that one boon alone, Hera, I think, like, you always want it because it's the best magic recovery, and you don't
If
need 4 gods in your god pool to make something
And
go
it doesn't
wrong.
have to be rare. You don't have to roll the high quality one either. Because even
No,
if what is the common level
common
do?
is 10.
20?
No,
10?
common is
Common
10,
is
and then it
10?
goes down from there.
holy
Yes.
It's
cow!
good.
Yeah.
Unless they balance change that, and I
It needs
forgot.
a
But
nerf. It absolutely needs a nerf.
I don't
Like,
remember if they balance changed that boon. But yeah, no, I'm pretty sure it was 10 for common.
so the other really fun thing about Hera is she does this like divorce type of mechanic where like
Hitch. The hitch
no
curse?
no 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 it's like if you replace a god's boon with someone else's, like if you already have an attack boon and you pick someone else's, it'll give you like palms in that slot. Palms, which are the upgrades to that boon, right? So she'll say something like, your swap boons gain +4 palms, right? So if you
Mhm.
trade Apollo's attack for Aphrodite's attack, it'll be like an Aphrodite attack +4. And then if somehow you do it again later in the run, it'll be the new attack +8.
Well,
Right, so
not
if you
only
just keep
that,
swapping and keep stacking the palms, which is kind of interesting, it's kind of niche. I don't think it's that good,
well,
but
the
it's
swap
fun.
mechanic itself, because if you don't have Hera's swap power up thing with the palms, what makes you want to swap in the first place is because it'll upgrade the rarity. So if you have
Oh,
someone's common attack, Zeus's common attack, and then you get the opportunity to swap it for Poseidon's attack, it will be Poseidon's rare attack. And then if you get to swap your rare for something, it'll be for a purple. And then if you swap a purple for something, it'll be for red, the heroic level. And then if you have Hera when you're doing this, it gets 2 or 3 palms. So it's qualitatively getting more rare powerful, and then quantitatively getting a higher level. So just there's no real good way to force swaps. Like, I don't, to the best of my knowledge, I don't think you can kind of play to doing a lot of boon trading.
No.
just like
Um,
rolls. Like you
yeah,
can enter a night with like 12 re-rolls or something like that, and you can try to
yeah,
force it, but yeah, no, it is hard.
yeah. But
Or you can
but
just go for boons more often.
yeah,
So
Yeah. The
talk
other
about
thing to talk
Hitch.
about Hera is the hitch. Yeah. Which it's underwhelming, but it's great for crowd control. If you have a
Is it?
very single target weapon, it can be. It also depends on the boons you get, because if you get the boon that if you kill a hitch affected enemy, it damages all other hitched affected enemies for a decent amount. It can,
I just feel
you
like
know,
it's hard to stack Hitch onto targets. Like, the
you
Hitch
only have to hit them
basically ties
once.
2 targets together, and then when one of them takes damage, the other one also takes damage,
no,
right?
it ties
No.
all hitched targets together. So if you like
Right.
hit once with the axe, all those targets are hitched, and you turn around and hit something else, then they all take the same damage.
Well, so then
Yeah.
it sounds great for the axe, but sounds pretty ass for like the magic stick or
Yeah,
the
it's not as great
you
for
know
some weapons, but something like
yeah.
the torches, where you can pierce through enemies, that can stack up damage pretty fast.
Oh,
Uh,
true. It's terrible against bosses, though.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
no, it's absolutely pointless against bosses. There's no denying that. But
It's the part of her I really don't know because I haven't really touched any of them. I just I go for the magic gain and maybe the boon swaps if I'm feeling froggy. But yeah,
For some
the
reason, I
other
keep
part
getting
that
her and Zeus's their duo boons, and it's Queen's Ransom and
uh,
King's Ransom. So it's either power up all your Zeus boons but throw away all your Hera boons, or the opposite: power up all your Hera boons and throw away all your Zeus boons.
yeah, you get one level of power up per boon you throw away on each of your whichever half of the divorce you end up with,
Yeah,
right?
I think
basically.
it's not just one level. I think it's a lot. I think it's like 3. So
Yeah,
like if
it's
you
like
get
Oh,
three
rid
or
of
four.
maybe.
if you
Yeah.
get rid of 2 or 3 Hera boons, then all of your Poseidon boons, like say if you get rid of 3 Heras and you have 2 more Zeus boons left, your last 2 Zeus boons will be +9.
Yikes.
Yeah,
That's
it
good.
does get yikes.
Yeah. So we've kind of mentioned this a couple times, but the gods can combine on your runs. So if you really like get deep into 2 gods, they can like have like a superhero team up boon that can like do something with your run. For instance, Aphrodite and Poseidon have a boon that treats every enemy as close and deals extra damage to close enemies. So now your ranged attacks,
I like
deal
that. That
extra
sounds
damage.
great.
Yeah, just extra interesting little thing there.
Yeah, there's a lot of
along with dialogue, along with some cute, well voice acted, lovely duo dialogue.
True.
Yep, unique voice lines for everyone.
I don't know, man. She's a D.
Hera? For that magic gain boon? You don't want that every time?
That's the only thing you want from her. And then you
Right,
get
but it's a
she's
big
one of your
thing.
4 gods.
It's a really big thing, though.
I was leaning towards C because Hitch has its niche uses and the magic is really strong. But like the other things that she does is kind of like, I don't want to say elitist, but it kind of is. Because it's like, oh, here, all your boons are heroic suddenly, but they're going to shrink over time. Or you only get a boost to your attack if you don't have any common boons.
If you get her one early enough that says make a boon into a common, and over the course of the game it gets rarer.
Demeter. That is Demeter.
Oh, that's Demeter?
Hera goes the other way.
Yeah, then no, she's a D. She's got literally one boon that I like.
She is definitely better than these other 4, but I'm willing to concede she's carried entirely by Born Gain, which is the name of the boon that helps you gain magic. Like you want it every time, every single run, and that's why it needs a nerf. Because you're like, oh god, I just want to see Hera one time for Born Gain, and then you never want to pick another Hera. Like
I will waste all my rerolls for that.
Yep. All right,
Hermes B. He just like flat increase to your stats. He makes you attack faster, makes you run faster, makes your specials faster, cast faster, channel a little less magic when you do your omegas.
I actually think my favorite thing about him is when you get the boon that says as you kill stuff, your attack damage goes up. So like if you kill something, you get 1% for 5 or 10 seconds, and if you kill something else, it goes up to 2%, then 3%, then 4%. So like if you're in a big room with a lot of enemies, you can end up with like plus 30% to everything by the time you're done that room.
If you're killing things fast, do you need extra damage?
Well, if you kill the small things fast, and then you need the damage for what's left around. I'm just saying it helps. It's like a scaling mechanic in small scaling in one fight. Every fight you have your own little scaling.
Yeah, it is free scaling, but
yeah.
He's not an A, he's a B, but I'm just saying that making it sound like, oh yeah, maybe he makes your attacks faster. No, he can increase your damage besides the speed and DPS.
Making your attacks faster is increasing your damage.
And that's what I'm saying. He can scale your damage percentage in other ways than
that
just...
That boon is like a no pick.
Oh really? Yeah, if attacks and specials go faster, always pick.
Yeah, I'd always pick something else over that probably.
All right.
Hey, well, he runs the well in
the well is good.
The Surface, where Amazon order perks that come in later. So I feel like that kind of brings him up a little bit, right?
Yeah, I tried that for the first time, and I was very confused when I didn't immediately get the item. I'm like, oh wait, it's a delivery service.
You can pay for express shipping if you want.
Yeah, it's usually not worth it.
All right, Chaos.
S tier. Don't care.
I'm just gonna throw out there. I think Chaos is S, but you have to work for it. Okay, he has like his boons are all over the place, but he has some really insane percentages sometimes. Like I think I've seen it as high as like 86% less mana to channel. Or
I saw one that was like you get
faster channel speed, right? But like you have to go through chambers with a crutch first before you get like
so first
stuff.
off, you have to pay HP just to go to his room, just to talk to the guy.
That should be a sign enough.
Yeah.
Second
off, then when you get to choose from one of his boons, they all have have 3 to 5 levels worth of punishment, and when you're done for the rest of your run, you get a bonkers power up.
All the punishments are worth it, in my opinion. His keepsake is good too because it gives you a random one. The random one doesn't always help you, but when it does, you're like, "Oh, I just got that for free." That's nuts.
So, fun fact about the keepsake: I don't know if you've seen this, but if you swap the keepsake out after, you keep the chaos boon.
You keep it.
That's a free chaos boon, even if it's at common level. That's free boon, and it's a strong boon.
And I think Chaos's design is sweet. He's totally like morphed, or it ish.
It.
They
They.
have totally morphed from their previous iteration in the first game. Like they just completely changed. They're this really ambiguous entity. They've got these really strange robotic lines like of dialogue. I don't know. The whole thing
Yeah.
about Chaos is
Their-
really cool.
Their new portrait is phenomenal because you see like all 3 stages of life in that one portrait. Because she's like holding a baby. You've got the grown adult form of Chaos, which is all nice and detailed, and then you have like the decayed dead head. It's all there.
Yeah, of like the old Chaos and
Yeah.
like this. Yeah, I don't know. It's really neat, and they're integral to the storyline too because they end up just naively telling Kronos what he needs to know to take over the Hades house, basically.
Mhm.
So I don't know. They play a huge role in the story, unlike all the other gods who are kind of just like side characters. All the ones we've talked about so far.
No, but for sure, Chaos is S tier. You always pick a Chaos gate every chance you get.
Not always. Maybe not late when you don't have enough chambers to really.
Yeah, I was
get
gonna say
over
like
the curse,
late
but, yeah.
third, like late in the fields. I might not take it, but
Okay, all right. So here's the next one. This is Selene, and Selene basically has their own mechanic, entirely unique. So we've been talking about spending mana this whole time. Selene's ability is basically the first time you get her, you get a boon that says after you have spent some amount of mana, you get a super attack of some sort. And then every time you get her again, it just adds different abilities to that attack. It's not a variety of other special attacks. It's just you get a super move for spending mana, and then you get to power up that super move. Mechanically, it is very interesting and is unique to all the other gods. Gameplay wise, terrible. F tier, never pick her. You can't use her. Fucking the worst.
it is.
I can't say it any better. I gave her own tier below D tier.
Yeah,
Selene.
Selene
Stay away from
needs. She needs to be fixed in order to be usable.
The sad part is they buffed her in the most recent balance patch, and it just doesn't. It's not enough to move the needle. It's just not.
It's not enough.
She needs to be something that you do automatically.
Yeah,
You need to.
the amount of time that you have to charge.
Just make it strong. What is the problem? Like why would you give me an ability that I have to charge every chamber that takes 200 takes me using 200 mana on moves that kill things to actually use this other move? What isn't dead after I've spent 200 mana, first of all? Second of all, when I finally get to use the super move, it is not more powerful than what I've been doing for the last 200 mana. Like,
Yeah.
it's mind-boggling to me. Now, there's one really strong one, okay? And they actually had to nerf it. It's Moonwater.
The
where-
healing one.
Is that the healing one?
It not only healed you, but if you took an additional Path of Stars, it could do things like give you gold, give you more life, get extra charges, like and also made you like deal more damage after using it. Like it was actually pretty good. Like
Yeah.
I don't think it was as good as it's not as broken as some of the other stuff you can be doing, but it was where
No,
this mechanic ought to
That's
Here's
the
what I
one
said-
that you
here's what I
get
think about
if
that.
Selene is the only option you have to take. It's like, okay, I have to take Selene. I hope I get Moonwater.
be. You can't even roll her boons. Okay?
You can't.
This is how bad this is. You can't. She gives you three choices. If you don't like any of them, tough cookies. Like you just wasted a room.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
Like it's just,
Like I said, when I first introed her just now, it's because I wanted to make sure her mechanic was fully understood. Because as a boon, it's terrible. What it should be is it should be like an Arcana card. You should be able to in the hub world, in the crossroads, be able to like pick and choose, like move around your Selene, ability, because it's all tied to mana. Mana is the new thing in this game that wasn't in the first game. Mana is the big differentiator from Hades 2 to Hades 1, and Selene is all mana dependent. And there are some builds where you literally don't even need to use mana. We didn't talk about it, but Zeus has boons that say if you have no mana, then you get power-ups. Like
Zeus
there's
basically prefers you don't use
Yeah.
mana. That's like one of his whole things.
Exactly. So Selene is all around her. There's the mana mechanic that's this new cool thing for this game, and Selene is all about it. It's the like ultimate magic or whatever, and it doesn't make sense as a boon to me. If it was something you set up in the crossroads, like picking your pet, picking your arcana, picking your Selene power, like that makes way more sense to me.
I have beef with the fact they call them hexes too. Like this,
Yeah.
this is the whole package, right? Okay, a hex
It's
to
like a
me is
Kamehameha beam, and that's a hex.
no, it's not like a plague on your enemy's
Metagross
house
is Meteor Smash.
is a
That one
hex,
you
right?
jump up and you slam down. That's a hex. Really? There's only
Yeah.
one hex he actually does. It turns something into a sheep. Spoiler alert: I've never done it. I've never taken it. I don't
No.
want to turn like some trash mob into a sheep.
Listen, that one actually is better than it sounds, and it's worded badly. So that one bounces between like 8 enemies. So what you can do is throw it on a bunch of elite mobs, and it turns them all into regular old sheep. So that one's actually
Do they die quick like sheep?
yes, yeah.
Okay.
They don't
Because like if they were just
lose all their armor and everything, and it doesn't cost a lot of mana to do. So I guess
Still.
it's kind of yeah.
okay,
Yes.
I
Still,
guess.
still
I
emphasis
guess.
on still does nothing to
Yeah.
bosses. Absolutely nothing to
Yeah.
any of them.
Yeah,
Like,
your
it's
big
just
mega.
not-
You
yeah.
only get one. If you take the sheep attack, you don't get the smash, and you don't get the Kamea beam, and you don't get the healing ability. You don't get any. You have the sheep thing. So now your big fancy sheep thing that can't be used against bosses. And the whole point is to try to be able to beat these bosses. So if you are going to make a build that uses a lot of mana, and you want to have a cool Selene mana attack at the end, and you get stuck with sheep, well, that's totally just useless in the final fight. Literally nothing.
And she has this like Path of Stars thing, right? So you pick your, let's call it a limit break. That's pretty much what it is. You pick your limit break, and then if you encounter subsequent Selene boons, you can essentially allocate points along a skill tree to get extra bonuses from your limit break, right? My problem with this is I've tried to do this, and you don't encounter enough Selene boons.
Yeah,
Like you
no.
might encounter like, I think I've seen like a max of 3 in a run while dodging them.
Doesn't her keepsake give you 1 or 2 or 3 more whenever you encounter her boon?
They actually buffed it. Now it gives you like 4 more.
Yeah. Well, so the idea would be then you first need one of her boons just to get the ability. Then if you let's say you get like 4 more and it starts with 3, so then you get 7 skill tree ticks from the second boon, and then another 7 from the third boon to get to like I guess whatever the max at the end of the skill tree is. So like you still need to get 3 of her boon before you get to the end of that skill tree, and that's if you're using her keepsake. And just you don't run into them that quickly. Like it'd be great if you could guarantee your first 3 rooms of the run, put on her keepsake in the start of the run, get a couple of Selenes, get a max skill tree, and then as soon as you get to the end of Act 1, take her freaking keepsake off and use someone else's useful one. Like that would maybe make sense, but you can't guarantee that that's how it's going to happen because the gods you encounter are random.
While we're on the subject of keepsakes too, I want to say I like that all the keepsakes have like expirations on them, and you have to switch them between acts pretty much. Like there are a couple you could use for the whole act, but that was something about Hades 1 that like there was like 4 or 5 keepsakes that were like good in Hades 1, and then you just would not touch the rest of them ever, and they were all good for basically the whole run. Whereas this one, keepsakes expire after 1 or X amount of uses. So like by the end of an act, usually you'll have a useless keepsake in your hand, so you have to switch and think about what your next move might be. I actually like that a lot.
I believe right now, if I remember right, like the only ones that are good through the entire run are the god keepsakes because they just increase your chances of finding that particular god.
Only the first time.
You can
No.
only
Well, so-
rarefy their thing once, if I remember right. But
is it?
the
Okay.
odds of finding them are still increased.
Fair enough. All right.
But as soon as you go into the
Selene.
keepsake thing, you swap. Selene is
Selene,
trash.
Selene.
That's what it comes to. Selene is trash.
It's
Tier belongs
really
to
a
Selene.
whole built-out mechanic that it really just needs to be, buffed, like scaled somehow.
It
Especially
was
with
a
this broken
change.
stuff running around like Born Gain from Hera.
Yeah, it was a change from the call mechanic of Hades 1, but I don't think they did it correctly.
Oh yeah, Hades 1 had calls, which were like limit breaks essentially for for each god had one. They weren't very good still.
Well, wait.
But
You needed to have a special call object that you got over time from building a relationship with the people, right?
No,
they
that's
were just boons.
You're thinking of the animal buddies. The calls in Hades 1 were just boons that you could get, just like a sprint instead.
Yeah, like Ares's turned you into a whirling blade and you could move around.
That's not what I'm thinking of then. I forget what it's called, but remember,
you're thinking of the chthonic buddies with Meg and Dusa.
Yeah, Megara would come in and dive bomb the field for you or something.
I don't remember
right?
the name of that mechanic.
That was the chthonic buddies, if I remember.
Let me ask,
or chthonic companions. Sorry.
I haven't researched it for this game, but my experience so far is all of the final relationship tiers with all of the characters is locked for me. I have not been able to get a single one into fully maximum hearts, relationship. Is that something that's just locked right now in the beta?
Yeah.
They haven't released it?
Yeah. I mean, future content most likely.
Yeah.
Zagreus Zagreus in the first game got to have a little bit more than a platonic relationship with several characters, and I'm assuming they're going to do the same here, but they haven't done it yet.
Have you been to the Salt Springs yet?
Well, yeah, but even that is, pretty soft core if we're talking compared to Hades 1 where they show up in your bedroom, right? It's heavily implied, whereas nobody,
It's not implied, it's just not showed. They're like, no, these two people boned, but we're not going to show it, but they did, for sure.
But they definitely don't seem to allude to that with the Salt Springs bathing friendship mechanic.
Yeah.
Not yet. Because remember, this is still early access. There's a lot that could be coming in the future.
And don't forget those top tier, right? You guys never played a dating sim in your life. You got to get to the top tier level.
Oh, if I can gush about dialogue a little bit too. I think Odysseus has some of the best written dialogue of all of it. Well, it could just be because I really like myths
we know what the Odyssey
and I think,
is. Yeah.
And I think the Odyssey is pretty high up there for me personally.
I think that's honestly what it is. It's true to the Odyssey myth, and they kept to it really closely. Have you taken the Knuckle Bones keepsake?
But they make it real though, right? Where she starts off, kind of in awe of the character Odysseus. She meaning Melinoe, and she says something like. I think it's after the first time they bathe, they end up talking about it because he says that she's not the first time he's ever bathed with a goddess, and he's alluding to his time on Circe's island, but also with the nymphs, and and she said, oh well, you always remain true and faithful to your family, and you eventually made it back to them, and he has this long sigh, and he's like, it's a story, basically just telling you that it's not that easy.
So my understanding in the dialogue is that everybody in this world has kind of read,
talking about it.
Has kind of read the Odyssey, right? Melinoe has read the Odyssey, and Odysseus knows how many of those parts of the Odyssey were tall tales and how many were real, right? And so Melinoe can go up to him and say, "Oh, remember when this thing happened? Who's the Moros? Moros constantly is going up to Odysseus like he's a rock star, being like, "Do you remember this time you did this cool thing?" And Odysseus like, "Yeah, that's a book."
Well, I just got the feeling from his response, it's a story god is saying that I wasn't as faithful as the story makes me out to be.
Well, if you want to follow up on that conversation, I found one where he's in the tavern, and he's talking about there are times where he would rather go back to the sirens than be with his wife and kids because he still has the song stuck in his head. So that's part of it too. It's they follow up on that line. They talk about it. I
still have the siren song stuck in my head.
Who doesn't?
Since the first time I've heard it, they have 2 songs. One is called Coral Crown, and the other one is called Claw Out Your Eyes. Guys, I'm a Coral Crown fan through and through, but which one do you guys like?
I'm Coral Crown.
I don't know which one's better, but Claw Out Your Eyes is the one that's constantly stuck in my head. I've been humming it we're recording for an hour and a half, and I've had it in my head this whole time.
He sent me a text message that looked blank, and it was written in like Apple's invisible ink one day, and I'm like in a meeting, and I'm like, "What is this?" And I'm trying to figure it out, and it materializes. It's like, "I'm gonna claw out your eyes."
I texted, I'm going to claw out your eyes in parentheses and drown you to death in between the music notes. And I did it in invisible ink. So he had to pick up his phone and go, what is this? And like, squeaky, squeaky, squeaky. And then there's the words. And I incepted the song into his head in the middle of a whatever business meeting.
So it's Scylla and the Siren. So Scylla from the Odyssey myth, right, is like that, supposed to be like a multi-headed serpent. She's not in this one. She's more like a clamshell, like weird, I'd say like reject from the second Pirates of the Caribbean movie.
That's accurate. Yeah.
Yeah,
She's an
and
Oceanid, which is a sea nymph. Is how
and
they
then she
describe
has
her.
bandmates, right?
Yeah.
Who are sirens. They're like mermaid looking. One plays the drums, one plays the guitar. She's the lead singer. And
No,
they chase
she
you
doesn't.
around there.
She doesn't. She doesn't. She plays the freaking keytar. It's
Yeah.
a piano.
It's the keytar.
Keytar.
Yeah, so
Because this
so
is like 80s
chase you
hair metal
around their
band.
So
arena.
freaking
Yeah.
cool.
Oh man, so good. Yeah, if we had them on this tier list, they would be S tier just by virtue of
plus.
those songs.
S
Yeah,
plus.
it's not a boon, but yeah, they'd be above.
In order to
Yeah,
make it fair,
chaos
we
for
would have
sure.
to rank. We would have to rank each siren separately. That's the only way to make it fair.
We put them all in S
four
anyway.
more here.
Well,
Yeah,
I think these four are gonna go pretty quick for me. But so Artemis, I'd put her in like the Hermes kind of tier. I think some of her boons are much better than others. You're only gonna ever get her once a run, so there's like no synergies, no anything like that. She's only really kind of in here. She doesn't really give you a boon. She's more like a side character.
Yeah.
But like it's all around crits, so you can get more crits, and then there's one where like you deal more damage after you sprint. I think that's probably the best one.
Well, so let's talk about the side character things for a bit here, because just briefly, Artemis will show up in a fight and help fight stuff with you and then give you a boon after. And Icarus does the same thing. The other ones, Medea and Circe, they go along with, there's two or three others underground. There's Arachne and Narcissus and Echo. And they're just
And
basically...
Hades.
And
Hades.
Hades.
Who is not on this list.
Yeah, and they're just basically empty. So they're not really exactly the same as all these gods up above are. They're not major gameplay elements. You just kind of maybe get one a run, maybe. And there's one of those in each biome. So, but Artemis and Icarus are slightly different than those other 4 or 5 because they actually do combat for you. But yeah, talking about Artemis, it's all about critical hits, and she has this mechanic where you can get like extra arrows that fire out, but they don't do tons of damage, so I find them not very helpful. So I don't particularly have a high opinion of Artemis.
Yeah, unfortunately, Artemis is definitely the god that took the biggest hit with the nerf hammer from Hades 1. Because
she went from a real playable god, one of these gods, to
an encounter god. Yeah.
She was also very, very good in the first game, though. Crits are not to be
She
trifled
was
with.
Absolutely top tier in the first game. Now that you can only get her boons once, and they're mediocre compared to what they used to be.
Hard to synergize with.
So there's a speedrunner build out there, right, that uses her keepsake called the White Antler, which I think it says if you are at 30 or below HP, you have a 30% chance to critical hit.
Yeah,
and like off of some of her boons, you can get like an additional 8% chance to crit. And like, crits in this game can deal a lot of damage. So like she fits into that, like world record speed running kind of stuff. I'm just not good enough to play with 30 HP. I will lose.
No, me either.
Yeah.
No. I have her around a C, maybe max.
Yeah, I'd put her below Heffy, probably.
Eric, you good with that ranking?
Yeah, I was leaning more towards B just because like most of her boons are generally useful, similar to Hermes, but with how little you're able to get her, you can't get her as often as Hermes. Yeah, C is probably where she's sitting.
Yeah.
Icarus.
So to that end, I feel like we should not rank Cersei and Medea because Hux is right because they're not like these other ones where you get
They're
them
encounters.
in like an encounter room, like a fight. And you know what? I'd almost argue that Icarus and Artemis fall into the same bucket, but they're here, so we'll just keep them here.
Well, the
But
nice thing
like
about Icarus
we
and
don't have
Artemis,
Echo and Hades and the other ones, right?
Arachne
Because
and Narcissus.
like Echo, I'd literally put at S tier because you can get a third Daedalus hammer
yeah,
from her
Yeah.
pretty easily. Like you can manipulate that very easily to get a third Daedalus hammer, which you can usually only get two of. Daedalus hammers are like really big upgrades to your weapon,
to your weapon.
And generally can make an entire build. So they're very powerful, and to be able to get a third one. But anyway, I'd say we probably keep these other two out of here and call Icarus our
Well,
last.
and Icarus is pretty good with that too, right? Because Icarus gives Daedalus Hammer type abilities.
He
Yeah,
does.
Yeah, he does.
Some
I
of them
think
are temporary, but
he does what Artemis does in the encounter, where he helps you fight, but he's definitely better than Artemis is.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely
so
a
he's
stronger
definitely
boon selection. The nice thing about like the reason why I think we should keep Artemis and Icarus on the list at least is they're an additional reward to the clearing the room that you go in. Like you don't expect them to show up. You have no
Oh,
plan
that's true.
on when they come in. It's just like, oh,
It's
cool, this is a bonus.
it's not like you're giving up a boon for them, which is what Eric is saying. So actually, I do
Yeah.
think that probably does put her maybe at the bottom of B tier.
I'd still put her at C just because of her strength, but Icarus
Yeah.
is at least B for that because it's just like,
if
great, this is
she's
a
in the
great
C
boon.
tier, then Icarus is a B. If she's in the B tier, Icarus is an A. Icarus is definitely better than her.
Well, I think Icarus is so much better than she is that he's an A.
Yeah, he can't be an S because again, his stuff is kind of temporary. It's random. It's not.
You can't
there's not a lot
plan
of
for it
synergy.
either, and you can't
plan for
actively hunt
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah, and
You
then
wouldn't plan for it anyway because just like Artemis, he doesn't really synergize with stuff, right? So you wouldn't
Right.
you wouldn't specifically seek him out, but all of his stuff is really good and free.
Right.
Who
Yeah,
doesn't like free.
that's the thing. It's just like, oh, it's a piece of candy on top of what I was already aiming to get from this room. And then Icarus shows up, you're like, oh, fantastic.
Yeah,
It's like that
I
free
don't mind
dessert you
this,
get on your
this
birthday.
list. It's a good tier list.
Yeah, me neither. I think this list is fine.
Yeah, I have no complaints about where we put these gods. That pretty much feels like,
I'd probably move this up to B.
I mean,
actually, just 'cause
I
it's
have
free.
to learn Demeter more, but like in terms of where we have things on the tier list, that's absolutely like, okay, if I would pick a god over another god, that would be top down where I'd go.
I think Demeter is probably the only god that got like buffed from having a 4-god pool now because 3 was enough to make broken builds, and now that you can have the 4th, like you stick Demeter in the 4th god pool just to get those 2 cast boons, just to get your origination damage bonus off. Like that's really what makes her so good. It's just like no instances where you don't want that Demeter cast combo.
Well, I feel pretty satisfied talking about the gods. Is there any other cool stuff about this just bonkers game? Like, I feel like as we were talking about the gods, it gave us opportunity to talk about all these different mechanics and all the different parts of it, including all the strategy, which you guys know are my favorite elements. Trying to determine what sort of powers to take from what sort of gods to try to aim for. So there was even though it's an action game, there is quite amount of strategy, quite a large amount of strategy to it that scratches the itch for me. But talking about how some gods are better than others for different reasons, that leads us to, I guess, any other gameplay type stuff that we want to cover. I know we haven't talked about how we all feel about like the final boss, for example, or the patch that came out a week ago.
Well, I'm so happy I beat it only like I don't know 6 days ago or so. I think was my first successful run.
Before the patch.
My first
before the patch, I beat the patently unfair version of Chronos.
Yeah. Can I just talk one quick thing about Chronos? I beat him on a plane. All right, my wife and I went to Canada, and I played Hades. I did a run or two on the plane, and I had to keep stopping and pausing and stuff for the steward that would walk up and down the aisle, like, here's your soda, here's your peanuts, here's your stuff. So I had to keep stopping, right? And she did that, like, she came over to collect my trash in the middle of my fight with Kronos. And I don't know about you guys,
I
Kronos
know what
doesn't
you're talking
stop
about.
attacking you when you pause.
No,
No,
he
he's
unpauses your game.
The flavor on Kronos is so good because without saying it, he's time, right? But like
Yeah.
you get this Arcana card. I think it's like the first Arcana card you get where you slow down time when you're charging your Omega moves, and it's just something that happens. It's basically bullet time. It exists in plenty of games. You don't even think about it. If you go into that fight with Kronos and you start using it, he's not moving any slower, and he's just doing that because he's time. And
He
then
mocks
I
you.
didn't even know about the pause thing.
Dude, the pause thing's totally... I can't believe I still beat him. My run was that gross. And remember I said about the Aphrodite healing ability? If I wasn't at 100% life, I would have got smoked by him during the pause. I would have turned my machine back on and been dead and been like, what happened? I thought I paused.
Your machine was in like sleep mode too, and he was still wailing on you.
No. I paused and looked over at the stewardess and like, whatever, here's my trash, blah, blah, blah. And I looked down, and I unpaused, and I'm like, where did I didn't have this little HP when I started the pause, and I didn't realize it, and I discovered about him beating on you during pause because there's something you can get one of the concoctions you can make at the cauldron in the crossroads is a concoction that says like Kronos will no longer attack you while the screen is paused. And I'm like, what do you mean he will no longer? Has he been attacking me during pause this whole time? I read that like a week or two later, and I was like, oh, that must have been what happened to me on the plane.
See,
What game? Name one other game in the history of your careers. We're all in our 30s. We've been doing this a long time. In the history of your careers as gamers, what other game had the courtesy to give you a pause screen, but then be like, it's not really paused.
I mean, I feel like this is like borderline Psycho Mantis level meta.
Yeah, I'd put it up there with Psycho Mantis and Arkham Asylum too.
Oh yeah,
and there's actually a Genesis game that it's an X-Men game, and it's a Mojo level.
Oh, is that the Arcade's Revenge?
Watching has watched X-Men '97 and at least knows who Mojo is. He's like a TV theme villain, and when you beat his level, you can't leave until you hit the reset button on your Sega Genesis. God knows how that actually works. I have no idea. But like, yeah, that pause thing is like many games that screw with you that break the fourth wall. Like Arkham Asylum makes your Xbox have a red ring of death. And like I actually remember playing it the first time, and like it's like this really glitchy cutscene, and you're like, what's happening? And like rumors around that time were flying around about the Red Ring of Death being like, that's it.
Those weren't rumors,
360
man.
is done.
That was it. Red Ring of Death.
And you get a Red Ring of Death from like the Joker, and you're like, oh my god, what happened? Because you're probably enjoying the hell out of that game because it's really good, right? Yeah, no, I'd put the pause thing up there with that. It's so good.
Yeah, the only other game I can think of that was close to that is on the GameCube. You had what is it? Sanity's Requiem, Eternal Darkness, where that one had like if you played poorly enough, it would erase your memory card, or it would presumably erase your memory card, and it wouldn't allow you to pause if you were doing poorly. So it's just like, no, you're doing bad. We're going to screw with your gameplay. You can't play correctly anymore. Oh, you're doing so bad, your game file is gone.
I forget what... I've never actually played it, but I heard a lot of gaming people in podcasts talk about... there was some Legend of Zelda game for the DS, either the DS or the 3DS, and there was some sort of... Is it Phantom Hourglass? Right. You can fill me in if what I don't know, Eric, if you know. But there's something. Your bottom screen is like maybe a map or something, and the top screen is what you're looking at. And there's like a clue that says two things have to touch, and it's the clue is that the things that are touching are something that's on your bottom screen and something on your top screen. So what they're actually telling you to do is close the clamshell of your console, but they don't say that. They go like, "Oh well, the two stars obviously have to meet," and it's like the stars. You're like, what do I do? What do I do? What? I'm in the room. I can't figure out this puzzle. What the hell? And when you close it and then open it again, and it does whatever the little like. I've never experienced that. If you played Phantom Hourglass, Eric, you can talk about it. But as far as breaking the fourth wall goes, that's a mwah.
Yeah,
That's
no,
good.
you described it pretty much on point. I don't remember the exact scenario, but yeah, it's basically there's no clue that you're supposed to close your DS. People found out the answer because they closed their DS in frustration, went back to it the next day, and then suddenly, oh hey, the puzzle's solved.
That actually would be a thing you do too. You're like, all right, I'm gonna take care of this later, and you just close it.
Yeah, Mom's calling me for dinner. I'll do this.
And you come back and it's done. Wow, that's pretty epic. And Psycho Mantis Hux is a boss on the PlayStation 1 that reads your controller inputs and counters you until you take your controller out and plug it into the second slot.
Okay.
You smoke him
All
because
right.
he can't read your inputs anymore.
That's pretty gross. All right.
So yeah, I feel like we've had a 2-hour discussion here. I didn't expect the tier list to take up the whole discussion, but I'm glad we sprinkled in plenty of other stuff about this game.
I mean, when there's so much to talk about this game and the gods are so varied, there's a lot to talk about. And
Yeah,
like
just the
dude,
dialogue, the characters.
we scratched the surface.
Yeah,
The
so
gods are the main part of the gameplay, right? The boons are the number one thing that you do. But like we said, we barely touched on all the different mechanics that happen in the crossroads that make the runs even more unique. So if we spent 2 hours talking about this game, imagine how many hours you could spend playing and reconfiguring your loadout for every given. We even touched the Chaos Crystal.
Oh god.
Don't say anything. Don't let people Google it. It's called the Chaos Crystal. It's more content.
yeah,
More content.
and what I'll say is like, yeah, we barely scratched the surface in this, but I think the game has barely scratched its own surface. It is still in early release. The going up to the surface is literally only half done. There's tons of dialogue and interactions that don't exist in the game. And I've heard rumors that Supergiant has said that every god that existed in Hades 1 will also exist in Hades 2. So there's just so much more to come. I mean, and
Yeah, if they had more
30
gods.
bucks, you're already getting your value for $30. But like it's still $30.
When I talk
and you can
about
just get in there
value,
and you want to get it again. It's so incredible.
I did notice, and I did want to make a point. We didn't talk about this in the beginning, but right now, so it's been about 4 or 5 weeks, I think, something like that, since the game first launched. No, it launched on June 4th. No, that June 4th was when I got the statistics. I'm sorry. It's been around a month since the game was made available. And when it was made available, it was the number one selling game on Steam. And when you look at Steam statistics of what is selling, they don't just talk about games, they also talk about Steam other products, including the Steam Deck. So Hades 2 was selling more than Steam Deck consoles were selling the week it came out. And it's been going down steadily. It's kind of stabilized in the 40s and 50s range, but it's stayed in around the top 50 of most selling games on Steam since it came out over a month ago, which is, and again, there's maybe 30%, 40%, 50% more content still coming out because it's in early access beta. It's not even a finished game, and it's doing numbers. So
Yeah, and like everything we talked about today might be different when the next balance patch comes out. Who knows?
Oh, yeah.
Hestia might be S tier after that.
maybe
But-
Cellini's going to get a spot in the Crossroads on my recommendation personally.
Yeah.
That's actually funny because she does show up in the Crossroads sometimes.
Yeah,
So yeah, I feel like we're kind of
I'm ahead of the curve, man.
Hopefully we're
Supergiant, call me.
going that way.
Forward thinker. I mean, if we want to talk about things that we're looking forward to or are hoping are added to the game, I don't know if you guys
That's a
remember
good
when
topic.
Hades 2 was first announced by Supergiant. One of the features that they said would be part of this game is co-op. Imagine playing
No,
Oh,
Hades
oh,
stop.
2.
oh, oh, oh. That's a
They,
Come on,
gamergasm right
guys.
there.
yeah, that was one of the reasons I was so excited for this. I was like, are you telling me I can play Hades 1 but with another person? And like, I think the idea behind it is that someone plays Melinoe, and at some point in the game you get Zagreus, and that would be just absolutely insane. I'm hoping that that is still in the works, Supergiant. Please tell me if it's
Okay,
not.
here's a question. That opens up so much more thought because if it's Zagreus, is Zagreus just like Luigi, Green Mario, the same basic mechanics, or does Zagreus get all of his original weapons from the first game, or does Zagreus have to use Malinois's weapons? Do boons work differently for Zagreus? Like, does he get Hades 1 boons instead of Hades 2 boons? Like we're talking like Pokemon Gold and Silver was twice as much game as Pokemon Red and Blue was, right? like,
That's what I'm hoping. Gold and Silver were
Oh,
my
man.
games. So if Hades 2 becomes the Gold and Silver of Hades,
16
then
gym badges, 2 Elite Fours. Right? If that's what they're doing with this,
here's 20 gods, two chthonic beings to play with.
yeah,
10
separate sets of
infernal
weapons,
arms.
separate.
Well, you'd have to take the rail back from Eris, but
That's
yeah,
fair.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's okay. You can
You
have the
just
rest of the weapons.
I
It's
was
good.
like, you can still have
yeah.
the rail, you just can't have her aspect of it. That's all.
Oh man.
Oh, co-op Eric,
Oh,
man, if you're right, oh baby. Oh
I am
baby, get in the
hopeful.
Discord, guys. Cable Club Discord. When that happens, it's gonna go off. Okay, everybody should start playing Hades and get in the Cable Club Discord for when co-op comes out because that's gonna be the place to be. Calling it now. Calling
and
it.
yeah, thank you for the early plug. So I think we're about ready to wrap this up. So I'm just gonna do our plugs here at the end after another sweet Hades sound, and just call it game over.
Thank you for joining us for the Cable Club podcast Side Quest Hades 2. I had a really great time talking with our guests Eric and Hux about this game. All three of us have just been playing it, pretty much nonstop, and we're so looking forward to seeing how this game shapes up. So, again, we talked a lot about what we know about playing this game, and it's in early access. And by the time this comes out, it might all change because they make frequent updates to this game. But nonetheless, I hope you had good fun listening. And if you want to hear more from the Cable Club, come over to our YouTube channel. We have 19 other episodes there, mostly retro gaming content. If this is your first time here, if you want to become part of the discussion, join us over in Discord. There will be a link below in the description. You can also find us on Facebook and, of course, other platforms like Spotify, Apple, and Audible as well, and other podcast platforms, usually wherever podcasts are found. So don't forget to leave a like, leave a subscribe. It really helps out the show. And until next time, game over.